Hello, everyone. We are in Sedona with Master Rick Levine, who is visiting from Seattle, of course, and on his way to other destinations. But Rick is here to present a workshop, and we're also working on our program for the big conference coming up at Omega in June.
Yeah.
And then Merryman Cassels is a local astrologer, international reputation as well, wonderful colleague of mine who also has been to Omega and who is also very familiar with this program. And so we're excited to kind of bring the tribe together and share these moments.
Right. And to talk about what's going on right now, the big transit of the year for many astrologers, Jupiter moving into Gemini, but we'll get there in a minute.
I mean, one of the things that astrologers do is obviously track cycles, right? And
that's the only thing we do.
And we synchronize this meeting here exactly with the Sun, Uranus, Jupiter coming together mid-May. And here we are in our community, not only speaking about transit, but eating good food as Taurus obliges. So one of the things that is really relevant for us astrologers is to understand the cycles the same way, people look at the weather forecast to be able to better plan ahead.
Yeah.
And the big questions that astrologers really examine is whether we can make a difference. Knowing about the cycle, does it mean you can have a different outcome, that you can influence what may happen? So that's a big question. And what's interesting is at Omega, it's a conference that we're having every year. And the last day is always dedicated to these coming cycles on a micro level. The whole concept of the conference is about the turning of the ages, which is a 26,000-year cycle, which we are now in one of these important milestones.
Shifts. Yeah.
Happening, during our lifetime. But then we're also looking at the smaller cycles that are the triggers and the facilitators. And of course, living on a day-to-day level. So Jupiter in Gemini, is going to move into the new sign within a week or two and stay there for a whole year. So that kind of helps us and helps humanity really be more informed about what we're stepping into. And that's our main focus at Omega, as we look at astrology from a larger cosmological perspective, including this big shift that is happening.
What are the dates at Omega?
June 7 to 9, and it's upstate New York.
Yeah, it's about an hour and a half north of New York City, and we'll get there in a minute, but it's a totally magical place. I love it. I love it there. Yeah.
And Merryman, you were there a year or two ago.
2 years ago.
I think that's where we met.
It is.
And that's where we became friends. And that is the virtue of in-person conferences.
Right.
Yes. Omega's a wonderful, magical place, and honestly, one of my favorite places in the world. And just the opportunity to, be in a classroom and learning, or a large auditorium. It's more of an open space, learning, and then sitting around the table with other astrologers talking about the transits. Just, it's not just the conversation, it's the being in the space together.
And
It's
many people have asked me, is it going to be stream, how do you live stream? And are we going to be able to tune into from different places in the world? And the answer is no, fortunately and unfortunately, because, we hear more and more people who are burnt out from too much screen time, just as we're having now. And, you can get so much astrology content online today, wherever you are. So these in-person events become, a protected species that is on the verge of extinction. And we really don't want to lose that. I think
no, it's important. And and even having someone like Linda Tucker coming from Africa, or Lynn Bell coming from Paris, to be able to have these people together and not only just hear a lecture, but to sit and have dinner or breakfast, because we have 3 meals a day there. Part of the magic. It's like being an adult summer camp of astrology, And so you get to sit and have a meal and have conversations that you wouldn't ever have online like this.
And the in-person ceremony and intention setting is also very powerful, as we are working collectively in person with this.
And so you brought up Linda Tucker, we brought up Jupiter in Gemini. It's interesting that Linda Tucker is not an astrologer per se, but she definitely knows astrology and has studied it thoroughly and is incorporating it in her work as a conservationist and as a wisdom keeper. 12 years ago, when Jupiter was in Gemini, I started teaching at her academy. It's called the White Lion Leadership Academy in South Africa. And the magical thing is that we bring astrology in a program that involves leadership. And of course, nature, because part of the leadership model is the lions and its nature. So understanding that we are now fusing these different modalities, ecology, consciousness, indigenous wisdom, astrology, and that there's a Jupiter in Gemini cycle, which Gemini is all about fusion, and it's all about...
And it's about fusion of things in fragmented different areas that aren't often connected. And let's not forget Amir Bey in this, because that brings in another part that's not often connected with the head-oriented astrology, where we're going to actually have experiential art installation that'll be reinforcing what it is that we're talking about. Can't put that online.
Can't put that online.
Yeah.
And Amir, for those who don't know him, is an extremely talented astrologer and artist and wisdom keeper. He has this magical way to really embody the planets and the meanings of the planet through experience. So it's not just visual, it's involved, it's engaging. So I think, Merryman, have you met Amir in the past? Have you?
No, we've only met online, but I'm fascinated by him and I cannot wait to meet him in person.
So you were in South Africa as well.
Yes. And we were there over the Leo-Aquarius axis. It was fabulous, holding ceremony with Linda, who is truly one of the most remarkable human beings I've ever met. Being in her presence is, it's an awesome opportunity. And seeing what she has done with her life in service to the White Lions, and being able to be gifted with the wisdom that she carries is a profound gift. And we are just so fortunate that she's not only going to be at Omega, she'll also be in Sedona the week before. So we're getting some great time with Linda. But you know, Maurice, I just remember it's almost like time stood still one afternoon when we were out in the Jeeps seeing the lions, and we were out. Linda was telling us about Alpha and Omega, two of the lions, two sisters, in Sal, and you had a conversation, a moment. I remember watching you, and you were quiet, and then you turned around and you said, we need to have a program at Omega, at the Omega Institute. And you asked Omega if she thought that was something that was good, that would be valuable to be brought into the world. And you received that confirmation. And I just was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get to Omega? But you know, it's here. We're doing it.
So is Linda the Alpha Lioness? So that way we have the Alpha at the Omega Institute?
I think you're right. I think you're
You
right.
know,
You're a clever soul, Rick.
I had the privilege of meeting Linda. How many years ago was Hawaii, the thing in Hawaii?
2015.
Yeah, so it was like almost 10 years ago, and also just, yeah, magical.
Remarkable being.
You know, I will say in all humility, she is not only one of the most recognizable and successful leaders in conservation, but she has managed against very patriarchal system, very rigid systems of exploitation, to turn things around and to serve as a role model for women.
Absolutely.
Talk about alpha lioness, and but for humanity. But the important thing that we're bringing is why lions, right? And why ecology in an astrology conference? Because with Jupiter in Gemini, we need to bring different modalities, different systems of thoughts, east, west, north, south, to understand a greater cosmology. And I think that is part of this year's message, that we need to step outside our mental boxes with Jupiter in Gemini.
And Gemini is the perfect sign for that, because Gemini takes those fragmented, diverse, diversity in people is important, but diversity in ideas is also important, because the two go hand in hand. And Jupiter, as we know, spends 1 year, approximately 1 year in each sign. It's about a 12-year cycle. And so Jupiter changes signs, every 12 years, which from an astrological larger perspective is not that great amount of time, but that it's moving from Taurus into Gemini now is incredibly important, because of the fact that when planets move into Gemini from Taurus now, any planet, they're going to make a trine with Pluto. And Pluto in Aquarius, in some ways, as the beginning of a 20-year cycle, is a harbinger of the age of Aquarius, which most of us astrologers agree is still out there a ways, but it's a much larger, grander cycle of over 2,000 years. And as these planets, first Jupiter, which moves into Gemini on May 25th, so it will be there when we are at Omega, and it will be trining Pluto, kind of humming that Aquarius energy, which brings in the Aquarius polarity to Leo. And I think you were making that point, but you never actually said those words, that the lion or the lioness being the sign of, related to Leo, that all signs are in polarity. Gemini shows that polarity even more than any other. Even Libra we think of as polarity, but Gemini is the polarity walking shoulder to shoulder. It's not the polarity staring each other in the face. And that's part of what we have going here right now.
And to add to that, the fascinating component of the age of Aquarius, we are now, at this tail end of Taurus, both Jupiter, the sun, and Uranus also soon to ingress into Gemini. And here we've experienced this electric storm as the sun, Leo, and Uranus, Aquarius, are conjunct.
You say electrical storm, you mean the CME that just happened, the electrical storm from the sun.
Solar flares.
Solar flares.
That caused the aurora, the northern and southern lights. And I mean, I'm sure many of you have seen these pictures. But when we say, we're not yet in the age of Aquarius, it is true, but it's overlapping.
It's seeding.
So we're still in the Pisces age, but it's fading as the Aquarian paradigm gains more prominence and visibility.
But this Jupiter in Gemini is going to be a nice leap for us.
Well, it is. It's another, when Jupiter aligned with Uranus on April 20th, that was like a portal. That was a door opening. And as we know, as astrologers, conjunctions are the beginnings of cycles. That opened the door. Now, as Jupiter moves into Gemini and trines Pluto, it opens that door even wider. And then next year, as mentioned, as Maurice mentioned, as Uranus moves into Gemini, it also will trine Pluto in a way that is maybe the most powerful aspect since the Uranus-Pluto conjunction that defined in many ways the 1960s. So it's an extraordinary period of time, and it's going to be really fun at Omega to look at this from the macro cycle of the polarity of signs from the age of Aquarius or Pluto in Aquarius, or the planets trining Pluto in Aquarius, and looking at that to the oppositional point to the fixed sign of Leo. So it's going to be an exciting, and then as Maury said, taking that macro cosmic thing and bringing it down to the individual, because the two are one and the same. Cycles fractally are one within another. And so this bigger shift of the age of Aquarius is also happening in every one of us in our own microcosmic lives.
I mean, we want on that completion to really equip people with tools, not just knowledge, but tools like how to approach this year, how to move forward with your life, what are the best decisions to make. So obviously, we all need a private consultation to really narrow it to oneself, but you will get enough insight to know what is the climate and what's the best thing to do. And Merryman, I remember your chart. You're a Gemini moon like me.
And I'm a Gemini rising.
And
your degrees 14?
And
16, 15, 16.
And so her moon is 14.
Yeah.
She was your mom, auntie in a previous life.
And then I have 29 degrees.
Say again?
He was my mom.
We couldn't hear you.
Did you say he was my mother?
No, maybe you were my mother. Whatever. We're all somewhat.
There's a resemblance. The hair.
The hair. That's right. That's right. But this Jupiter and Gemini, this is.
You have Jupiter in Gemini, right?
I do. Yes. So this time is just Anna. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you experience it? Are you eclectic?
Oh, yeah, I'm a little eclectic, you might say. I'm always in a different direction. I'm a little eclectic. But I mean, I feel like this is just, this time it's like mental endurance for me. It's just, my brain is alive. It's just click, click, click. And I feel like I'm getting jump starts on a regular basis. And, one of the things that I often share with my clients is you're talking about how to experience transits. It's looking at the potential and choosing which octave I want to dive in. Do I want to go to the lower octave or the higher octave? How am I going to roll into this? How am I going to flow with it? I often go back to the metaphors from the hive, from the beehive, since I'm a beekeeper, but, really being with that flow.
And Lynn Bell, who is a Gemini and will be celebrating her birthday at Omega with us. So another community experience. Is going to speak specifically about Jupiter in Gemini, and she titled her presentation Learning a New Language, which is both literal, but it's also metaphorical. I don't know exactly what she has in store for us, but I
But
can
it'll be good
imagine.
because Lynn's talks are always pushing the envelope.
Color. Mhm.
And very poetically and very yeah, she's bringing the rational with the inspiration, which is one of her gifts, really. So beautiful. When we look at Jupiter in Gemini, Rick mentioned the trine to Pluto coming right as it gets ingresses into the new sign. In the summer, Mars will be in Gemini, and it will square Saturn in Pisces. So look at the date, August 15, with Mars Jupiter conjunct in Gemini, square Saturn in Pisces. So there are different milestones in this whole year. No, it's in the same sign, but it's going to make different aspects. It's going to make different, different angles. And so it will be flavoring this year differently. And that's what we're going to get to more deeply at the conference.
Cool. I can't wait. Let's go.
Let's go. Okay. Goodbye, everyone. See you
We'll
in
see
a
you
couple
there.
of weeks.
Thank y'all. It's gonna be fabulous.